In Module 2.2, the last one, we talked about free market capitalism and where wages came from in a general sense. In this module, I want to sort of zoom in on an individual job. Let's just look at warehouse jobs in your metro marketplace, or driving truck jobs in your metro marketplace. Clearly, there are a lot of people making local deliveries. There are a lot of people working in warehouses all around the airport, the warehouse districts of your metro area. And you'll recall in the last module that I talked about, if you did a quick and dirty survey, you'd start to find out that there was a range or a zone for a given job. It looks something like this, where the average wage we're going to call 100. We'd find that, so that's the 50th percentile company would pay $100, or 100% of a given average wage. And then we'd find that probably 2/3 of all the employers would pay within plus or minus 15% of that wage. So to make my math easy, a job pays $10 an hour. 15% of that would be $11.50, would kick us up to the 115th percentile. Or somebody would try to pay $8.50, and that would take us down to a lower percentile. What we really want to focus, though, on is what happens if we want to get to 120% of the going wage all the way up to 150%, because FedEx and UPS are paying their drivers and their warehouse people those kind of wages. How are we going to increase our productivity to get to that level is the big question. You know, there are different ways of doing it. Imagine if we had 10 people in a warehouse and we took the 2 least productive people. Not saying that they, couldn't do better if we gave them a chance. Let's just be simplistic and sort of, heartless here and say, all right, let's can the 2 least productive people and say to the 8 people, do the same work that these fellows were, and we're going to give you their wages. In other words, we're going to pay the same wages for the warehouse. We're just going to divide it by 8 instead of 10. So the average guy just went up 20%. He's now getting 120% of the going wage for doing that job. And in theory, it might work if the other 2 guys were so bad that they didn't show up, or if they didn't do anything, or worse, if they showed up and tried to do stuff, they made errors. And so there's multiple times the cost of just doing it right the first time. That might work. But that still is not going to get us to 150% where we're not working harder. How do we do that? So I want to look at a number of sort of experiments or responsibilities we can build into a job, like in the warehouse, to, as UPS and FedEx have done, to get the productivity and the wages up to the 150% strata. First of all, let's imagine if we said, look, if we're going to pay a higher wage, we have higher expectations. We expect people to get here a few minutes early and work steadily all day long. And when they take breaks, they come back from their breaks. They don't abuse that, because what we're going to do if we put you on your honor is we're going to get rid of the babysitters who sort of make sure you check in on time and you get back from breaks and so forth, because the babysitters are overhead. And if we get rid of the babysitters, we can give you the babysitters' wages built into your job because you're being more responsible. Second thing is, if we start paying higher wages, we are not going to have as much turnover as we used to, because people are saying, the grass isn't greener, this is pretty good. And if we have less turnover, then the people who show up know how to do it. They don't have to go through 1 month, 2 months, 6 months of kind of making errors, trial and error, to sort of figure out how to do it right at the customer's expense. We have to incur repeat hiring, training, screening kinds of costs. So maybe for the whole group, productivity goes up another 5% just because turnover dropped. Then we start to rethink our service processes. We sort of flowchart how stuff flows through the warehouse, and we find out where the failure points are and the bottlenecks are and where the error points are. And we say, hey, what's going on there? And we look a little closer, and we sort of rethink our systems to make them a little smarter, a little bit more goof-proof, help us to be better at what we're doing. So productivity goes up another 10%. Then, because we start to do everything right the first time, we don't have the correction costs, so that means we can do more additional work, which supports higher productivity by maybe another 10%. I'm sort of making these percentages up as we go. If error costs drop, we're going to say we're going to get rid of the inspectors. In other words, we expect individuals to be responsible enough to do their own inspection or do it right the first time. So then we'll give you those wages because we have less inspection overhead. And you're going to manage yourselves. You may have a supervisor, but it's a lead team working kind of person as opposed to somebody running around with a whistle and a whip and that sort of stuff. Then we're going to say, you know what, we need to cross-train at all the different jobs because we have surge problems. All of a sudden, 3 truckloads of A-plus items, fast-moving items, show up at our back dock. If we can receive that all today, put in the computer tomorrow, when phones start ringing, we'll actually have higher fill rates, higher average order sizes, better customer satisfaction, as opposed to we'll ship some now and some later, creating twice the transactional cost if we just could have received it on a timely basis. But that means everybody has to be able to receive. So that gives inherent flexibility, productivity to the group. And then because we do have 0 errors, we do have 100% on-time delivery, because we do have higher fill rates because of same-day receiving, our service starts to be better and our customers start to give us more and more of their business. Our average order size grows. We even start to get last looking a little bit more because our service is so good. Yeah, our price is a little higher, but our total procurement cost, which we'll look at in later modules, drops for the customer. So that gives us a big bump. All these things start to add up to 195% of the going productivity, or if you remember, there was one slide where we computed that there was $50,000 of gross margin dollars generated annually per warm body. If we could wave a wand and get that figure to double, so our value added or gross margin dollar per warm body was 100,000, then we could pay 150% going wages and we still would make good profits too. So these are the kinds of productivity plays that we're going to have to work on if we're going to make it happen. So I think in summary, I've got to ask the big questions. Who's interested out there in viewer land in trying to figure out how to rethink, re-engineer, redesign your job so that it can support 120% of the going wage for that kind of situation, or in some cases like that warehouse scenario for FedEx and UPS, 150%. I'm not guaranteeing that your company will or can do this. It's largely up to you, because there are these 2 iron laws. Free market economics sets the zone for the wages, and employers have to pay any more than what the zone says. But that doesn't mean you can't all work together to create premium productivity to support premium wages for your job niche. Secondly, as a happy byproduct, you're giving perfect do it right the first time service, because do it right the first time is the low cost, high morale, and high service value to the customer way of doing business. And so, you may be laying bricks, but if you lay the best bricks in town, you got your pride. And then how many people would say, all right, I want to be responsible for helping to do all these things, because if everybody's got to buy into this if it's going to happen. So we'll continue to pursue this over the rest of the video modules, because when you really think about it, what's your next best alternative? To stay where you are and doing what you're doing. And if you say, well, I'd like to go work for a better ecosystem, there's so few of them out there, it's better in a sense just to say, you know what, let's invent our own. Thanks. Assuming you've been watching modules 2.1, 2, and 3, I think the net take-home at this point is Bruce is talking about some sort of revolution here. Or maybe it's like Thomas Jefferson penning the Declaration of Independence to send it to the King of England. Like, hey, we want to be free and pursuit of happiness and all this great stuff we haven't really enjoyed before. So I want to take a little time out here and talk about really the new employment contract that I'm advocating. I assume that many of you are kind of hooked on some of the ideas of, oh yeah, I'd like premium wages, I'd like to have pride in being best service, etc. But maybe some of you are a little bit wary that, your frontliners particularly wary that, wait a minute, is this one of those, yeah, I want to go to heaven, but I'm going to have to die for it tomorrow kind of things, as opposed to, well, I don't want to die for it. How can I get there in some reasonable, not totally pain-free, but, low pain kind of way. And on the flip side, management's thinking, well, wait a minute, Bruce has promised them pie in the sky, how are we going to finance this? So I'd like to review kind of the old, employment contract that most companies really have, as opposed to the new one I'm advocating in this next slide. First of all, the old deal, most companies tend to be top-down, financial management driven, and the idea is, if we hire people cheap and work them hard, then we're going to make more money than if we pay more and let them screw off. But the point is that if we pretend to pay them, actually they pretend to work. Maybe the new deal is, all right, we're going to pay a lot more, but we expect to get a lot more, and we expect people to be responsible in co-creating the productivity that's going to equal and exceed the increases in wages so the company can make more profits too. Everybody's going to win here. In the old deal, we found, or managers often said, well, I can't delegate as much as I would like to people because, first of all, they're not doing that good at the current job they are because I'm not paying them to do it anyway. So I have to do more myself. I'm feeling very overburdened. I need to hire an assistant to help me supervise, do more top-down kind of action. Under the new deal, the idea is, wait a minute, if I'm going to pay more, I'm going to expect more, I'm not going to allow reverse delegation. When somebody comes to my office and says, hey boss, we're going to run out of boxes in the warehouse, I'm not going to say, tell me all about it, let me solve your problem for you and do your job. I'm going to say, well, I guess the objective here is don't run out of boxes. Go figure it out. You're kind of a big boy now. I'm paying bigger wages. I expect more responsibility. And if you can't do it at this high wage, we have lots of other able-bodied people who would love a chance at doing the job. So there's that kind of peer pressure, not just on the team, but from people who would like to be on the team that sort of make people say, boy, I really want to hang on this job. And then a third thing is, instead of being financial top-down, we're thinking about how everybody is going to improve profit power, because financial numbers, turns out, are only symptoms. And if we try to manage the symptoms, we're still not addressing the root cause of where does profit power come from. And we'll spend a lot of time talking about where does profit power come from and how we improve it. So at any rate, we now say, all right, we're proposing a new contract. The problem is, how do we get from here to there? What kind of a trip is this? And what are the steps that we're going to have to take to get to the promised land? Well, the first thing is, we have to all agree that we're in a current situation and trend that is unacceptable. And I don't know that a lot of people appreciate just how bad things might be, but we're going to spend some time in future modules on just how much money companies aren't making and what it means for bleak futures for a lot of employees. But we have to agree that we could do a lot better, and we're unhappy with the current situation. The second point is that we have to agree on the fact that we want to pursue high-performance service economics for everybody. Third point is, but to do that, we're going to have some basic education. We're going to have to be fluent with financial language. So when I say PBIT, profit, PBIT, profit before interest and tax, that's the same thing as operating profit, etc. We have to get in touch with the assumptions we have been operating under, a lot of them unspoken and actually flawed. And we're going to have to find new assumptions that we really understand in an articulated manner. We have to new productivity plays, new responsibility sharing. We're going to start putting numbers everywhere, because if we are going to progress, we have to know measurably what's going on, and measurably our actions, our theories, our experiments giving us the new improved results we want. There'll be natural ranking from best to worst of profit centers, of different warehouse picking rates, of all kinds of things, of sales territories. That could panic some people, but we're going to find that that's actually a great tool for everybody to learn and get better. We're going to have to promise a certain amount of tough love, because free markets demand that. If we don't deliver for all of our 4 stakeholder groups, the best people in those stakeholder groups, they leave. They find somebody else to work with. We cannot have cross-subsidies where some people are doing all the work, other people are coasting along, enjoying the show, and getting paid the same. It's possible that we may have to weed some losers to feed some winners. We may even close down some branches because they're just chronic losers and structurally, strategically not going to make it where they are. Those kind of things. But again, those I think are going to be minimal types of things if we're smart about how we can do. And really, instead of focusing on the tough part, I like to focus on the love part, where if we're smart about this, we all can be winners. So the upfront issues now for management are several. They're sort of like, well, wait a minute, Bruce. These people expect higher wages, but where's the productivity? How about if I say, look, you guys all work really hard. Do your old job, plus do some new stuff. And when we get better results, then I'll give you a raise. Trust me. In other words, we're asking the employees to be the risk takers in this venture. Conversely, the other way around is we could give everybody big raises and hope the productivity follows, and the company takes all the risk, and that's not viable either. It's going to be a shared process that we're going to have to go through to get there. There are a couple slides here that suggest if we pay more money, we can attract or turn on the talent in our people, so they get either better new people, or the old people become recommitted. And then by working on education productivity plays, we get premium output, 0.3, and that then gives us premium profitability that gives us a return on our investment, 0.1. So that would suggest that the company is going to be the risk taker here, not the employee. But I'm going to come up with sort of a middle path where everybody can share in the effort. Also, what's going to happen is when you start to measure numbers everywhere, you're going to start to find that handfuls, just a few customers are making all the money to subsidize a lot of losing customers, or some branches are enormously profitable and other ones aren't. Or some employees seem to be very, get there early, stay late, work their ass off. I mean, their personal identity and esteem is tied into the fact that, they work hard, they're the best. And there are people who think, well, that's not the way I'm wired. I kind of show up and look around and say, well, who's the worst guy? If he's on the payroll, then if I'm just a little better than him, that's job security. So a lot of people unconsciously tend to set their sights on the least productive person or department or branch and sort of play down to that. But if numbers go everywhere, then everybody says, oh my gosh, I didn't realize we could be so much better, and I'm willing to work a little harder. And I don't expect 90% of the employees to all become sort of obsessed achievers, but I do expect that a lot of people would say, hey, you know what, I could work a little bit more diligently, systematically, and so forth, and besides, I know what's in it for me. So I would say that, in summary, I don't want you to panic and think that we're going to have a lot of pain ahead here on this road. I will say that if you want to have big gains, you've got to make big changes. Big changes usually involve big pain, transformational pain. The trick is that we have the right plays, the right assumptions, we can make big changes with reasonable, manageable amounts of pain, and all along we realize that the sacrifice is well worth it. So if you just stick with me and watch the modules that come ahead as far as the productivity plays and the underlying new assumptions and so forth, I think we can get from the old contract to the new contract at a pretty good clip with not too much stress, and it's going to be well worth it. Trust me. In this module, I'd like to talk about stakeholder balance. And first, we've got to describe what a stakeholder is, and maybe if you thought about it, you'd realize that we are all stakeholders in different kinds of communal gatherings. We're stakeholders in our families. We're stakeholders in our church if we are active there. We're stakeholders in the United States. We're all citizens of a country. And, there is a commonwealth. In other words, if we all get together and cooperate, things are better than if we're by ourselves. That's what free market capitalism is. By all working and creating surplus and trade our surplus, we're actually better off than if we try to do all the things ourselves and be terrible generalists at everything. The problem with stakeholder systems, or creating commonwealth for everybody in the system, is some people may say, I'm going to look out for number one, let everybody else do the work, and I'm going to try to take a free ride on everybody else. And if the takers start to be greater than the givers who are putting into and maintaining the system, then the system starts to liquidate, and it becomes kind of a vicious spiral. It's not a very happy scene. And you can see this happening in some third world countries as they start to collapse. Perhaps another way of looking at it is, in the long run, nobody involved in a stakeholder system can do better, do better than the whole system itself. So while we're all worried about ourselves, we have to sometimes look up and say, I've got to think about the greater good, the common good, the longer term commonwealth, otherwise there isn't going to be one. And of course we think about this from generation to generation, taking care of the planet. We're all a stakeholder in spaceship Earth, and whether it's going to be able to take care of our grandchildren and their grandchildren. And so we'd ideally like to leave things equal to or better than we inherit them. That's called stewardship. So let's look at the main stakeholder groups in a company. First of all, they're the employees. And if you said, well, notice the circle in the very middle, PAT. That does not stand for point after touchdown, but rather profit after tax. And for most distributors, that is the skinniest little number you're ever going to, can imagine. And we'll look at that later on in another module. But basically, if employees think about just themselves, they'll say, you know what? I want higher wages, better benefits, and I don't want any stress, and I want better hours, and I don't want to work as hard, etc. And this is going to be afforded from chests of gold in the CEO's office. Of course, it's a zero-sum game. It's going to take away from that profit after tax. Customers are saying, you know what, I want more service and I want lower prices. And if, of course, we give them what they want, we liquidate our profit after tax. Suppliers are suggesting what they'd like to do is raise their prices to us, cut back on their services and freight policies, etc., and make more money for themselves, but at our expense and our bottom line. And of course, shareholders are saying, wait a minute, I want a bottom line. I've put a lot of money into this business. I expect a return on my investment, which is what profit after tax is. So I'd like to see that go higher. So you see four groups. Really, if they were thinking short term just about themselves, they're going to eat that profit up and there's going to be no company at all. Now what we've got to do is figure out how we're going to make, instead of having a vicious liquidation cycle, how we're going to have a virtuous expansion cycle. In other words, is it possible that the employees, by working smarter, can give customers better service value, but do it at a lower cost and get paid a little bit higher price? That would actually expand the bottom line, but it would also give customers, a value that they wanted. And then if that happened, the customers would buy more from us. If that happened, then suppliers are happy because they're selling more to us and we're paying our bills on time because we're making good profits to put back in the business to have the working capital to pay the suppliers. And the shareholders are happy because they're saying, gee, I'm getting a decent return on my investment, so I'm going to put more money back into the business to create an expansion, which is going to be pleasing the employees because now they've got job security and even job growth potentials. So that's what has to happen. But to do that, all the employees are going to have to sign up to make a new set of productivity plays happen. Specifically, we're going to have to figure out how to measure, achieve, sell, get paid for basic service brilliance, which the entire section 3 of this video experience is about. And once we get that going, it tends to self-perpetuate itself, which would be a good thing. Now, here are a couple things to remember. First of all, you have to believe in community economics. In the long run, you can't do any better than the others. Secondly, we're going to have to get educated in high-performance distribution economics and plays. Then we're going to have to try to make it happen. And it turns out that we're not going to be able to do these great things for all customers. We're going to have to figure out one best niche of customers and tune our story for them and really own and dominate that niche. And once we've dominated one niche, if we want, we can go after another one. So just one at a time. We're going to have to expect, a personal payoff. In other words, if I'm going to put stuff into the system and there's going to be commonwealth, I expect my fair share. So the gives and the gets will balance out in the long run. Other things to remember are, on the get side, what are you going to get for what are you going to give? If you give, on the right-hand side, your heart, mind, and body wired into strategic plays and trying to grow profitability, then you'll be able to get premium pay. The company will be so effective for customers that you will have job security and job growth because customers are going to like you so much they're going to keep buying from you and buying more and telling their friends and so forth. You're going to, in order to change your skill set, you're going to have to be able to try new things, which means you're going to fail. All beginnings are tough. Every time you try to do something, you fall on your face. That's okay. That's how you learn. So we're all going to fall on our face forward and not worry about it. We're going to make what are called good mistakes, and we're even going to get praised for good mistakes in future modules. We'll find out about that. And we're also going to work not within our department, but across departments for the service processes that cut through departments, so the whole process team is on the same page and working together as opposed to departmental fights and scuffles that go on. And as a benefit, we're going to say, you know what? I'm on a team, and it's a winning team. It's like being on the Super Bowl team every day of your life. getting paid premium wages, and having bragging rights too. So what we want to do is keep those things in mind and hang in there and keep watching these modules, and we're going to get there.